Siga. Friday, the 15th of Kislev. Friday, the 13th, for those who understand the hint. But not to worry. For the Jewish people, Friday, the 13th, is actually a superb day. Friday is the 6th day of the week, and the 13th, that's 613. The amount of mitzvot in the entire Torah. You got it? You like the Hidush? So you see, what the world out there looks at it as a day of fear, as a day of darkness, God forbid. For us, is completely the opposite. A day that we remind ourselves of the mitzvot of the Torah. But above that, also, it says in many Sefarim that Friday is definitely one of the greatest days of the week. And the reason being is simply because it's close to Shabbat. So from Friday, we jump right into the beautiful day of Shabbat Kodesh. So let's go quickly to some of the messages of today's Hokle Israel. One of them, and we'll discuss about the Perashah in a few moments. Amen. The Zohar, rather, brings a pasuk from Perashat Beshalach. The Torah there talks about how the Jewish people were afraid of the Egyptians chasing them. This is referring to the 7th day of Yetziat Mitzrayim, known as Ash-Shevi'i Shel Pesach. And the Torah says, God sends a message to the Jewish people that goes as follows. Hashem ilachem lachem, be'atem taharishun. God will wage the war on your behalf, and you stay quiet. What does it mean, stay quiet? The pasuk there says that Bnei Israel were crying. Bnei Israel were crying out to Hashem. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, Ma tis'ak elai. Now is not the moment to cry. Dabber el Bnei Israel be'isa'u. Now is the time for action. Before we go to the actual first message of the Zohar, I'd like to share with the Kahal Kadosh something very beautiful that I saw many years back. And I apologize to the Kahal for not announcing the dedication of the Lighthouse Torah Project and the iTorah.com. But since I'm already in the middle of the class, we'll save it for the next recording, Beli Neder. But everything should be La'ilui Nishmat, the names that we mention on a regular basis, and the iTorah.com in honor of the Shidduchim of the names that we mention on a regular basis as well. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Shehakol Nihiya Bidbaro. Now, I repeat the pasuk. Hashem ilachem lachem. God will wage the war on your behalf. Be'atem taharishun. And you stay quiet. Our rabbis tell us that in this pasuk we also find a very powerful message when it comes to our behavior in the synagogue. When a person is praying, when Birkat Kohanim is taking place, when the Hazara is taking place, when Sefer is taking place, when Kaddish is taking place. In all these scenarios that I just mentioned, guess what? In none of the above, we are allowed to talk. We follow the Birkat Kohanim. As one great rabbi said, many times people wonder how come that they had beracha for a while and suddenly the wheel of fortune changes. And you know what question was it asked? How do you conduct yourself during Birkat Kohanim? Are you listening to the Birkat Kohanim? Are you absorbing the Birkat Kohanim? Or you're schmoozing during Birkat Kohanim? You know what schmoozing means? You are conversing. Interesting concept. Why? Because Birkat Kohanim, as we know this very well, we learned that many times, it's an all-inclusive beracha. And the first beracha of Birkat Kohanim is how to keep your wealth. After God bless you, is how to keep the wealth. To be wealthy, it's beautiful. But to remain wealthy, it's even more beautiful. How many times people went to sleep wealthy and they woke up, Haz v'shalom, lo aleinu. And the opposite is the truth. So perhaps we utilize this pasuk as a area of self-improvement during the prayers. Sometimes, it doesn't happen often, but sometimes we hear that when the Amidah is finished, that people start talking. That is also, by the way, I'm just sharing the halakha, because that is the next halakha after the halakha of today. Today's halakha was how to do Oseh Shalom. The next halakha says, now you did Oseh Shalom. What do you do next? You finish Oseh Shalom. Do you start walking around? Do you sit? Do you talk? Do you learn? What do you do? So I'll give you the short answer, and Beli Neder Sunday will discuss it at length. Short answer, the halakha is, when you finish Oseh Shalom, you take the 3 steps back, you stay standing till the Hazan begins the Hazara, and you only go back before Nagdishach. So what do you understand from this halakha? Guess what? You're not allowed to walk around. You're not allowed to sit unless the person is of a certain age, or the person has a medical or physical limitation. In that case, you're allowed to sit. But you know what the halakha says? You are allowed to learn Torah waiting till the Hazan begins, according to some opinions, with your eyes. With your eyes. Unbelievable halakha. We'll share it Sunday, Beli Neder. So what do we understand? That in this pasuk, the pasuk is telling us, Be'atem taharishun, when you stay quiet in the synagogues, protection for Am Israel comes. And I like to suggest the following. Obviously, we are in a tremendous amount of commotion and concern of what happened this past Wednesday, I believe, or Tuesday? Tuesday. Regretfully, in the city of Jersey City. And from a political perspective, or for a police perspective, there are many different opinions. Some of them, they are saying anti-white, anti-Jew, anti-Semitic. They try to flower up what happens. But from a Jewish perspective, irrelevant of what is politically correct or incorrect, the fact that Yehudim were killed is definitely a wake-up call to the Jewish people. Literally, you cannot escape the fact that the tragedy did happen. You can blame the criminals, you can blame the killers, all that is fine for the law of the land. But what about the Jewish perspective? So the Gemara tells us in Masechet Shabbat that when one Yehudi suffers, especially a calamity or tragedy of this magnitude, we all are on the same boat. Not because it happened to somewhere else in Jersey City, so then automatically, it doesn't affect me. They went to a big town. They went to a city that is the most, according to whatever people say, I don't know that city, I was never there, but based on what I read, that is a challenging city to live with. But if this is where our reaction is, they were living in a dangerous neighborhood, guess what? It defeats the message of what we need to do on the wake of this tragedy. Like we discussed back then, the tragedy of Pittsburgh. Remember what we mentioned? That day, 2 years ago, almost, over a year ago, right? We already remember a few weeks ago the first anniversary of this tragedy. What did we mention? It happened on a Shabbat. Perhaps Shabbat reinforcement, it's suggested. It happened in a kosher supermarket. Perhaps enhancement of eating kosher is required. Many times people, as I said yesterday, they allow themselves to eat non-kosher out of the homes. And we already learned that is definitely not the right approach. But now this pasuk is telling us black and white. You want God to step up to the plate and bring protection to the Jewish people? Ve'atem taharishun. Stay quiet. Quiet when? The Tosafot Yom Tov, which you heard of him. Yes, thank you so much. The Tosafot Yom Tov, Rabbi Yom Tov Heller, a commentator of the Mishnayot. He writes, and I'm not going to go through the whole lecture. Look on the file. I spoke about this on the day of the Yortzeit of the Tosafot Yom Tov, that he composed a special prayer in honor of those who don't speak during the prayers. So this is definitely an area that we all can use an improvement. So let's say that you finish the Amidah before the Hazan. If you're able to remain standing on your seat, do so. That is the proper halachic procedure. If it's difficult, have a seat. But one thing we all agree of, avoid the conversation. Why? Because if you talk by yourself, you're going to be labeled like somebody that has mental issues. So if you talk to someone else, some people are hard of hearing and they raise their voice. And they raise their voice like no one is around. And this happens, regretfully, often. So I think that this is a very interesting message that the Zohar is giving us, that protection and well-being, it also is connected to our connection with Hashem, especially during the moment of prayer. This was not written in the Zohar of today. I added the explanation. The pasuk does say in the Zohar, the same pasuk that I started the class, but the Zohar sends a different message. Hashem ilahem lachem, be'atem taharishun, which means God will wage the war on your behalf and you stay quiet. The Zohar of today discusses this pasuk as relating to the topics and conversation during Shabbat. What do we speak about on Shabbat? The Zohar HaKadosh brings a pasuk from Yeshaya HaNavi. You should know this pasuk by heart because it's part of the Kiddush. Right here, in Tashim Mishabbat Raglecha, Asot Hafasecha Beyom Kochi, Bekarat al Shabbat Oneg, Ligdosh Hashem Mechubad, Bechibato Me'asot Derachecha, Mimeso Hefsecha, Bedaber Dabar. This pasuk is part of the Shabbat Kiddush. Mizmor LeDavid, in Tashiv, Beshameru, Al Kemberach, Sabri Maranan. It's all Sidurim have the same Kiddush. Now, what is this pasuk? I'm not going to go to the full version, but it says, Bechibato me'asot derachecha. You will honor the Shabbat by acting on the day of the Shabbat in a different way that we act on a regular basis. Bedaber dabar. And how do you speak on Shabbat? Or better yet, what do you speak about on Shabbat? So this is already part of the Kiddush. The Zohar, connecting to the pasuk of Perashat Beshalach, it says, great is the merit of Am Israel that the Almighty gave them the opportunity of connecting with Hashem. And that's what the pasuk says. Hashem ilahem lachem. God will wage the war on our behalf. The Zohar HaKadosh says that God gave Am Israel the Torah. That's why the pasuk says in Sefer Shemot, Beni Bechori Israel, my firstborn son Israel. Now, so we're not denying that from the Torah perspective, Am Israel are known as the chosen nation. And this is something that even Goim understands, with the exception of the fellows from Jersey City, that they call themselves the true Yehudim, the black Israelites, the Hebrew black Israelites. They say that they are the true Jewish people of the world. I'm only just throwing it onto the table just to understand what's going on. And the Zohar says, now God selected us as a nation. And we say this every day of our life. The Beracha Birkot HaShachar, the Beracha of the Torah. Asher Baharbanu Mikol Ha'amim, Benatallanu Et Torato. God selected us from all. Thank you. Okay, sounds lively. Beautiful. And it says, the Zohar Kadosh, Baharbanu, Borei Olam selected Am Israel. But now, how do we develop the friendship? How do we develop the development? The Zohar Kadosh writes and it says, Leidabek Bahem. It says, God gives Am Israel the mitzvot. The mitzvot becomes like connectors to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Umitoch ahavato otam, the Zohar says, from the great love that God has for the Jewish people, gave us special gifts. Number one, the Torah. Without the Torah, it's like a body without the neshama. It's like a cell phone without battery. It's like a car without the keys. Although today you don't need the keys. But, you need to have a battery. The code also, correct. So we have the codes. But besides the Torah, Beyahavlon Shabbata, God gave an added gift to Am Israel, the gift of Shabbat Kodesh, that is the holiest day of the week. And we know this already. We discussed this several times throughout the years, the elegance of the Shabbat, the happiness of the Shabbat, the preparations before Shabbat, the dress for Shabbat, the eating of Shabbat, all these, the candles and everything else that we do on a regular basis. But not only that, the Zohar Kadosh says, "Veyesh bo menucha besimcha mikol she'ar hayamim." No one can deny that the day of Shabbat is definitely the most peaceful day of the week. Peaceful because we are detached and disconnected from the physical, I shouldn't say physical 100%, but from the materialistical and technological aspect of the world. Our cell phones go on Shabbat mode, our emails take a break, our telephones are put on away, our business, we just ignore it for the day. A lot of the things that become part of our daily life in honor of Shabbat, guess what? I'm going back 50 years ago, that we had no email, we have no cell phone, we have no even phone lines in some places of the world, and we live a very peaceful way of life. How much anxiety the cell phone causes in the person today? Non-stop. Every buzz, let me open, let me check, ta-ta-ta. Even for kosher things, you can spend all day involved in kosher things. If it's a shi'ur, if it's a message, which is nothing wrong with it. But we understand that now life became a bit easier, but more challenging. Like yesterday, we were discussing in a shi'ur the loss of privacy. And the question was asked about a video camera in a bedroom. So many young parents today, they have what? A video camera, right? For the children, to monitor the children. So what, or the grandchildren. So what happens now? Now they're hacking the video cameras into the private people's homes. Haz v'shalom. Can you imagine now you need to be worried of the video camera that you install to watch your baby sleeping in her or his crib? This is the challenges that we live today. Relax, you don't need to have it.
I'm not relaxed.
Okay, I understand that. You're a Kohen, so you understand that too.
I have these problems all day long.
I hear you.
All day long.
All right, so speak to an IT fellow to give you a two-way verification, and hopefully you can minimize the hacking.
Maybe a pill.
Okay, the pill is a different story. Beshakul Shabbat keneged kol haTorah. When I put on a balance Shabbat or Torah, they are equal. Even though Shabbat seems to be one day a week and Torah is a way of life. Torah, 613 commandments, and Shabbat is one collective with many elements. Nevertheless, the Zohar says, Kol HaShomer Shabbat, Ke'ilu Kiyam Kol HaTorah Kula. A person that observes the Shabbat, didn't say honors the Shabbat, because there are many people that honor the Shabbat. They put a beautiful Shabbat table, they have a Shabbat outfit, but what happens after the meal? They sit down to watch TV, they sit down and check their emails, God forbid. So the Zohar is saying that how do we determine, or how does Shamayim rather determines if a person is a Shomer Shabbat or not, on their overall conduct in honor of Shabbat. And I'm sure that the more a person will learn about Shabbat, the more we are going to understand what does it mean to truly be a Shomer Shabbat. And then the Pasuk says, so what do you understand? That if a person who is Shomer Shabbat is considered like he or she is observing the entire Torah, so what do we understand? That a person that is not Shomer Shabbat is ignoring the entire Torah. Why? Short answer, because the Shabbat is the main connector between Hashem and Am Israel. And that's why the Pasuk says, Bekarata la Shabbat oneg. You will call the day of Shabbat a day of enjoyment. What does this mean? So interesting enough, many months ago, we came across a very interesting message from one of the days of the Hog. And it says the following. The Pasuk tells us, and you will call the day of Shabbat oneg. What's the meaning of the word oneg? Pleasure, celebration, joy. But guess what? Opposite, it gives you the word nega. You know what nega means? Nega means an illness that affects the body. The Torah calls it nega sarat. You know what the Musar says? Don't look at the day of the Shabbat as a nega. Many times people look at Shabbat and they say, I can't do this, I can't do that, I cannot do, I'm in jail. God forbid that a person labels the day of the Shabbat like if the person is in jail. God forbid. Why? The opposite. The Zohar Kadosh writes that you want blessing during the week, take care of Shabbat. That's what the Zohar says. Demineh mitbarechin kol yemei shiv'ah. Don't look at Shabbat as the weekend, but the Shabbat is the foundation of the week. Yes, for the work week, Sunday is the first day of the week. But what first day of the week? The week of business, the week of mukseh, the week of cell phones, the week of money matters. But what is the foundation of that week? Shabbat. So now, at this moment, Friday, mid-morning, we are saying goodbye to last week, and we're getting ready for the new week with the Shabbat arrival. The Zohar Kadosh writes that why Dafka, the day of the Shabbat, is a day of joy and pleasure. What, Sunday or Monday or Tuesday, it is not? The Zohar explains an interesting concept that specifically happens on Shabbat that doesn't happen during the weekdays. A good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom. Now, Shabbat Kodesh, whatever we do for Shabbat during Shabbat is considered Lichvot Shabbat Kodesh. You're going to take a haircut today, let's say, in honor of Shabbat. You're going to go to the cleaners to pick up a suit in honor of Shabbat. You're going to shine your shoes in honor of Shabbat. You're cutting your nails in honor of Shabbat. You go to the mikveh, you take a shower. Most of the things that I mentioned, we do on a regular basis. But we have a bonus round when it comes to Shabbat. Since I'm doing it in honor of Shabbat, the kavanah, obviously, so this enhances even the similar action like taking a shower and getting dressed with a nice suit, a nice jacket, and a nice tie. The Zohar HaKadosh explains that even what the food that we eat on Shabbat, it carries Kedusha, it carries sanctity of Shabbat. So with that being said, we need to understand that during the week, the neshama, our spiritual soul, our godly part in our life, is not always excited when we spend a lot of time in physical and materialistic matters. This is a normal understanding. Why? Because what does the neshama is? Spiritual. So something spiritual, what does it want? Spirituality. The body is physical. So what the body wants? Physical. So the body wants to stay in bed longer. The neshama wants you to get up to pray. You follow me? The body wants to eat another kibbeh, another ka'ak, and the neshama says, you had enough. Hajj. Hajj. So what happens now? The Zohar HaKadosh says that on the day of Shabbat, the neshama becomes part physical. In what sense? Not in the matter of the neshama, but the neshama always also welcomes on the day of Shabbat the materialistic and physical actions that we do. Why? Because we're doing it in honor of Shabbat. And that is one of the reasons why we say Shabbat Shalom. Shalom of whom? Between the body and the soul, between the guf and the neshama. And that is true joy. Imagine yourself, I'll bring an example. What happens if a person has a beautiful family but argues with his wife all the time? It's not full happiness. We agree on that? Or what happens if a person has a wonderful family but the children are not married? Haz v'shalom. That's not a full happiness. Or a person has parnasa but is single. That is not full happiness. You follow me? So you know what the Zohar HaKadosh says? Shabbat is the day of the week that the spiritual and the material aspect of life, they have peace. They supplement each other. The Zohar HaKadosh adds further, not in today's portion, but it says, with that being said, of the physical action, just give me a second, I'll give you quickly the final message. It says as follows. The pasuk mentioned in Yeshaya, Bekarata la Shabbat. What is the meaning of the word Bekarata? Karata you call. Who you pick up the phone, Shabbat, what time are you coming? You know what the Zohar says? Karata means we go out to welcome the Shabbat. The Zohar will explain next week. I'll give you just the free sample. That this means that a person should always be ready before Shabbat begins. You be waiting for the Shabbat. Don't let the Shabbat wait for you. Imagine yourself, you got home late, you are taking a shower, and your wife is doing the candle lighting for Shabbat. What does it mean in plain English? You are running late. You are running late. And that's what the Zohar says. Bekarata la Shabbat. You are ready before Shabbat starts? Oneg. Now you have the beracha of the Shabbat. But if a person runs late, and that's why the halakha says, a halakha that we all know, that a person on Friday afternoon should go home early. The mahloket in the halakha, how late can you work on a Friday? In today's calendar, one opinion says 12:45 p.m. you should finish working. Other opinion says 2:45, 3 o'clock. You like the second one, I can imagine. Okay? 2:30. Okay? I'm talking about Miami time. New York is earlier. Why? Because Shabbat is at 4 o'clock. Here at 5:15, 5:12 today, I believe. You understand? Why the halakha says from the moment of minha, meaning to say the minha that a person is halachically allowed to pray, no longer engage in working. Yes, you can continue preparing for Shabbat. You can setting up the hot water, prepare the candles, take a shower. As long as whatever you're doing is in honor of Shabbat, you are okay. But if you're in your office and the clock is ticking, and you're getting closer and closer to Shabbat, you're gambling of, God forbid, desecrating Shabbat with all the side effects that it has. And that is one of the messages that Be'ezat Hashem will discuss next week. And there is a second part to it, which is the second final statement of the Pasuk that says, Bedaver Davar. That also, the way and what the person speaks on Shabbat, that conversation could be conducive to the sanctity of the Shabbat or not. What does it mean? If you talk on Shabbat table, for example, about investment, or you talk about a business opportunity, where your mind it is going to be? In the Shabbat or in the business? In the business. And that's something what the Zohar Kadosh will highlight in the near future, that, you know what, there is a time to talk, and there is a time to celebrate, and there is a time to enjoy. So you want to talk about what? You're going to ask, Rabbi, I cannot talk about business. I can't talk really about politics. So what should I talk about? Why not politics? Because politics sometimes, it creates mahloket. True, by the way. Politics sometimes, you have guests at home, and you start talking and say, no, he's good for nothing. And then you're going to say, no, how can he be good for nothing? He's so good for Israel. No, this and this one and that one. And at the end of the day, it became a mahloket, Gog Magog, on the Shabbat table. That's why I'm at the liberty of saying things. So what do you speak about on Shabbat? Speak about life. Speak about how your week went. Speak about some words of Torah. Sing some songs. You're allowed to sing. You tell me, Rabbi, you don't have a good voice. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Not everybody has a good voice. But yet we attempt to sing. And definitely one of the ways that the Zohar mentioned back in the early days of Chumash Bereshit is the essence of saying a few words of Torah. Whatever it means. Even just repeating something that you heard today or throughout the week, or something halakha, or something about the Berashah, or story. Or if not, there are plenty of English books available today with short messages, if it's messages of Emunah, messages on the Berashah. And guess what? You'll be surprised how these small readings sends beautiful messages to make our life a more happier and meaningful life. Now, the Musar of today discusses an interesting formula that applying them in our life can make our life happier and more meaningful. I am not going to give you the full version because it could be a bit lengthy, but I'm going to tell you different messages that the Musar of today encourages to invest. Invest. Okay? The first thing that comes to a person's mind when I say invest, what is it? Financial, right? Excellent answer. Okay, now the rabbi is going to tell me about investments. I can, but I will not do that today to you. You're welcome to ask me a question privately. Because, as I said the other day, through the people's situations and questions, we learn a lot of interesting things about life. But I'm not a financial advisor. I'm only sharing the message of the Musar of today. And I want to share the highlights of the Musar. And it says, can I have this book, please? Take this. I'll take this one a minute. Because I want to give you the proper... Yes, it is. I'm sorry. You're right. I opened up the wrong page. That's why I didn't see it. But the Musar of today, I'm going to go straight to the investments. What areas a person should invest to have a happier life? Huh? We'll see. We'll see. Definitely children bring happiness to a person's life. But as the children grow, they bring also challenges, which is fine. It's a blessing that definitely we need to have. So, a person, I will. A person wants to connect with God. I'll bring the example. You want to connect to a Wi-Fi network. What do you need? Chazaku Baruch.
What?
Password.
Oh, password.
Thank you. You need a password. So it says the Musar of today, the more connected to the physical world and to people, the less room for godliness there is. The Musar is not telling us not to interact with people. You need to interact with people. You need to interact with the world. But you set the rules. You set the guidelines. Make room for godliness throughout the day. Beautiful message number one. So far, so good. Message number two. En refu'a me'ahanina. There is no better healing than graciousness. Hen. A person that smiles. A person that has a nice character. A person that is not impulsive. A person that is easygoing. That good personality, it makes the life of the person physically better. 100%. Next, there is no greater wealth like the wealth of knowledge. There is no greater treasure like knowledge. Knowledge is something that doesn't take space. How many times we say, wow, I didn't know that. The more we learn, the more we realize how little do we know.
Aywa.
Thank you.
Ham Yom Tov used to say that. Alayhi shalom.
Beautiful. So it says, Be'en mamon ke mamon hadda'at. And there is no greater money like the money of knowledge. In other words, the person knows many times people make mistakes, financially speaking. Why they make mistakes? There are many answers. Many answers. One of them, they're not thinking. Or they believe that they know it all. And that's why Shlomo HaMelech says, Chokhmah berov yo'es. Wisdom is achieved by asking an advice. You go to someone, you ask an advice, and that person gives you an advice, and then you say, wow, I never saw it like that. It happened to me not long ago. Somebody came to me for a business advice. And I asked the person, did you make a budget, including your salary? How much you want the business to produce? He tells me, if I sell X amount of dollars a week, a month, I cover my expenses. He threw me a number, which I felt that it was very low. Guess what? After he finished talking, I ask him, did you add this? Did you add that? Did you add compensation, workers' comp, insurance, fire extinguishers, fire inspections, taxes, payroll taxes? Oh, no, 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 no. At the end of the conversation, whatever he thought, he needs double. And guess what? If he needs to make double, the business is not worth it. So I saved them 6 figures.
يا سلام عليك.
Yes.
Abraham will save you inshallah 12
Amen.
figures.
Amen. Thank you. Amen. But for me to be saved 12 figures, I need to have them first. Right? So thank you, Yore Kohen. I have them already.
have them.
I have more than that. Baruch Hashem. You understand? Next. And it says, and there is no evil like the evil of stupidity. In other words, use your brain. Use your sechel. There is nothing bad to ask for help. There is nothing bad to ask for an advice. Regretfully, what happens when people need to ask for help, mentally, they feel embarrassed. Can you relate to that? You understand what I'm trying to say? So if you ask, imagine yourself, this poor fellow goes and invests, signs a 5-year lease or 3-year lease, gives a personal guarantee, the way many businesses ask you, and then he realizes, what did I do? What did I do? Do you understand the side effects that could bring the embarrassment of asking? So the Musar of today is telling us, don't be a fool. Ask. Ask. Nothing wrong with asking.
Before you cut, measure.
Yes. That's a rule in textile. Or for Mohalim. Before you cut, measure. Thank you. Now, let's continue. Be'en ihus ke ihus hane'eman. There is no better. Ihus means pedigree, reputation. There is no better level of reputation like that you are a trustworthy person. You are ne'eman, excellent. You have a good name. You know what I do often? When people want to move from different places, I tell them, do you mind bringing me a letter of reference? Or have your rabbi call me? Or where were you before you got here to Miami? Why do I do that? To make sure that the person is not running away from a fiasco in a different city of the world. And guess what? It happened several times.
They're moving here because
they want to move here. But now they understand that I'm asking for the letters. They don't come back. Because what the letter will do, at least will tell me something about the person. And you need to understand that rabbis have, how do I say this without putting anybody on the spot, have ways of reading between the lines. This is from the Torah. Berachel bitcha haketana. We'll continue. Be'en menuha ke'izabon hata'ava. A person wants to have a restful life. You want to be relaxed in your life. What do you do to achieve that? You may say, move to Florida. I know what you're saying. True. Florida has, Baruch Hashem, nice weather throughout the year. Life is a bit calmer than other places of the world. But let's be honest here. This is not what the Musar is referring to. The Musar is referring to the following. Ta'ava. What's the meaning of the word ta'ava? Ta'ava means desires. A person has desires. Now, what kind of desires are we talking about? There are many different levels. There are people that have desire for money. There are people that have desire for food. There are people that have a desire for inappropriate behavior.
يا ساتر.
Alcohol, like our good friend said from the back.
وين؟
Or wine or alcohol is the same family. So it says, you know how you can live more of a calm life? When you subside your desires. In other words, if you're always looking at what somebody else has, instead of counting your blessings, guess what? You're going to be running throughout your life. You're never going to be happy because you're trying to keep up with someone else. And this is not what God wants you to be. God gave you a different set of beracha. Maybe you have, like he said before, wife, family, children, friends, and that person only has money. Money doesn't buy happiness. So the Musar is telling us that if a person lives a calmer life and not all the time pursuing the pursuit of happiness through external elements, the person will be able to live better. Calmer. ואין מעשה מעולה ממחשבה זכה. And there is no better action than having pure thoughts. We learned this topic a few weeks ago when Rabbi Arush was here, and in one of the lectures that he gave was the topic of the mind. How the thinking of the person can help the person, can encourage the person, and how the negative thoughts can bring down the person. So it says if a person puts in their mind good, happy, positive thoughts, that makes the life of the person a better life. He goes further and it says, one second. באין חטאה גדולה, מחילה, I skip one line, באין צדקה גדולה מאהבת האיסורים. I will explain what I just said. And I respectfully ask you to stay tuned because there are 10 more messages coming our way of formulas to remove different negative areas of life. So it says, there is no greater tzedakah. Tzedakah means righteousness, right? But tzedakah also means charity. There is no greater righteousness than the love of suffering. Ahavat isurin. Now you may ask yourself, Rabbi, what does it mean, the love of suffering? Why? Because I suffer, I should love it? The Musar is telling us that when the person accepts whatever happens in their life, Shamayim says, you know what? He got the message. We don't have to go to the next level of waking up the person. Let's say a person, for example, has a flat tire, right? Or a person experienced something. It says, don't turn your head to complain. The Musar says, thank you, God, that it was only a flat tire. So it cost me $20 to tip the fellow that covered the hole, that patched the wheel. I have to wait an hour for AAA to come. It says that when a person looks at the setbacks of life in this way, like I mentioned the other day, remember the story of the guy that was complaining why the apartment was empty? And another guy says, you should be happy that it's empty because the last guy that I rent the apartment to lived a whole year and he have to evict him because he did not pay rent for a whole year. So what do you rather have? An empty apartment or somebody living that you need to evict? Obviously an empty apartment. You understand the difference? Continues the Musar of today and it says, Velo holi min hadda'aga. There is no greater sickness, worse than worrying. If a person worries all the time, it affects the mind, it affects the body, and it affects the soul. We're not telling you that a person should not have thoughts or a person should not have a bit of concern. But I think that the Musar is not referring to the people that occasionally are worried because they're going to have a medical exam, etc. But talking about, I believe, as a way of life. There are people who worry about anything and everything. It's cloudy a bit today. Oh, why? It's not a nice day. It's sunny. Oh, too hot. Can you relate to that? That people find the negative in every area of life? These individuals, according to what we are learning today, their life definitely is not a happy life. And their life is not a meaningful life. And probably they don't live a good life. Even though they may have a nice house, they may have an apartment, that's nonsense. That's nice, it helps. But there is nothing better happiness than the happiness of the person themselves. Belo avodah zakah me'ahava. And there is no greater way to serve God and purer way like the person does the mitzvot out of love and not out of fear or not out of obligation. Belo perishut tov me'asipuk. And there is no greater way that a person lives a tranquil life like the person who is happy with whatever they have in their life. Sipuk means you are content with your lot. You are satisfied with whichever God gives us. Belo shemira hazaka me'ashetika. And there is no greater protection to the person than silence. What was the Zohar message today? Silence is gold. How many times a person gets in trouble for what they said? Not for what they did. For what they say. Shalom Bayit issues. How many issues of Shalom Bayit can be avoided if people will sometimes stay quiet or sometimes say the word but the proper word? Continues the Musar of today. Belo aniyut gedola mea himda. There is no greater sign of poverty like a person that has himda. What's the meaning of himda? Himda means covering, desiring what somebody else has. That's why the 10th commandment is what? Lo tahmod. Lo tahmod. Do not covet. Because if you are covering something that you don't have, a couple of things are happening. Number one, you are being ingrate to the Almighty. Number two, you are jealous of another person. You're never satisfied. God forbid. And that's why in your mind, you are a poor person. Belo hayim arevim me'asameach behelko. And there is no sweeter life like the person that is happy with the portion that they have. And it says, okay, the same part. The next part is a separate topic, but this is a thing that we are able today to finish the class with these messages. I'll repeat them quickly. Be gracious. Try to become wiser. Increase knowledge. There is no shame in asking. Earn and develop your Shem Tov, your trustworthiness. Run away from desires. Bring to your mind positive thoughts. Accept what happens in your life, and that will make the life of the persons better. Avoid pursuing happiness only through physical matters. Stop worrying to live a better and a more meaningful life. Save the Almighty out of love. Be satisfied with whichever blessing God gave you. Learn how to exercise self-control and silence. Stay away from desiring and covering what others have, and be content with the blessing, as the Mishnah writes, Sameach behelko. Be happy with your lot. You know what our rabbis say? Sameach behelko shel acherim. Be content with the success of the other. That is the secondary message of the Mishnah. The literal message is, I have this, I'm happy. I'm happy wearing this suit. I don't have to wear a suit that costs 4 figures. I'm happy with a 3 low-figure suit. For example, some people know how much it costs. Happy. The chokhmah is not to pay a lot. The chokhmah is to have nice and spend a bit less. But regretfully, many times people measure the value based on price. And that's part of the hemdah. That's why, for example, Apple, right? Apple, I don't know much about Samsung, but Apple. But Samsung and Apple are the same. In what sense? They both try to target the public. So what they do, they give you iPhone 9, iPhone 10, 3 months later, iPhone 11. 3 months later, iPhone 12. And why they roll out new models every 3 months? Because they understand that there are people in the world that they must have the latest. And the phone companies, the providers, they know this. And they give you an incentive. Trade it in, we'll give you X amount, we'll give you a flexible payment plan, $24.99 for 48 months. Say, big deal, $25 a month, big deal. Why are they successful? Why are they selling thousands upon thousands of units in days? Because they use the psychology of hemdah, of desire. Remember many years ago, you drive on the 95 highway and there was a commercial for a car. Remember? And what was the slogan of this vehicle? Be the envy of the block. Yani, they guaranteeing you psychologically that if you drive this vehicle, which it wasn't a high-end 6 figures vehicle, was a cute car. And it says they guaranteeing you psychologically that if you're going to drive this car, everybody will look at you. The end. And what are we learning now? Stay away from that. I'm not going to tell you the brand of the car. I know you want to know. But it's already gone. They stopped. Maybe they heard my class a few years back that I mentioned this and say, you know what, the rabbi spoke about us. We don't want the sales to go down, so remove the billboard. True story, by the way. There was on 95. You remember those signs? Okay, my good friends. So I wish everybody to have a lovely Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom Mevorach. We'll see each other, God willing, a bit later. Baruch Adonai Li'olam, Amen Be'amen. Rabbi Hananiah ben Akashia Omer, Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu, לזכות את ישראל לפיכך. הרבה להם תורה מצוות שנאמר, אדוני חפש למען צדקו, יגדיל תורה וידיר. אמן. אמן. אמן יהא שמי רבה מברך. Amen. 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 Pereva me atzana. Amen. Amen.